Hey there, my name's Oliver. Today I'm going to be showing you how to get started with the Raspberry Pi, everything that you'll need installing Pi OS, and by the end of this video, I'll show you how to launch a web server off of the Raspberry Pi. Stay tuned. The board that I'll be using today is the Raspberry Pi Zero W. Depending on your use case, you may want to get a full-size one or the small one, like I have. The bare minimum that you will need to get started with the Raspberry Pi is a micro USB 5-volt power supply, a minimum 8GB SD card. I've chosen to go with 32GB, which is slightly overkill. If you want to go further to be able to see what's happening on the Pi while working directly on it, you need a micro HDMI converter, USB for the keyboard, and HDMI cable to connect to your monitor. The first step in making the Raspberry Pi work is downloading the Pi OS onto our SD card. If you have an SD card that is 64GB or greater, you'll have to download an SD card formatter to make the OS work. Then just simply insert your SD card and we will continue with installing the OS. So to kick things off, we're going to go to raspberrypi.org and we're going to click on downloads. And then here we are going to download the Raspberry Pi imager for whichever operating system you're on. I am on Windows, so that is what I will do. And as you can see, I have already actually downloaded it, but show the whole process. Go to your folder. This is literally the easiest download you will ever make in your life. So you open up your imager, and as you can see here, I already have my SD card, removable disk E, and I've already actually installed this, but we're going to do it anyway. So here we got the setup, install the imager, run the imager. Here we go. So we're going to choose the operating system that we want to install. I'm just going to install the basic one, 32-bit. And then we're going to choose my SD card and write. And yes, this will erase anything that you might have had on the SD card. So, yep, and we'll be back once this has completed writing. And there we have it, folks. Raspberry Pi OS has been installed. So now I'm going to do a little bit of magic to get my Raspberry Pi to work without having to connect a monitor. So in order to do that, I am going to go to some of the documentation for the Raspberry Pi. And here you can see that to set it up wirelessly, well, first of all, it has to have Wi-Fi, and second of all you got to do is modify this WPA supplicant.conf file. There it is. Okay, so within boot here, so I'm just going to make a new text document. I'm going to redefine it as a conf file. And we're going to open that. And it is empty. Hurrah. I'm going to just copy and paste this in. All right, CA. Seems easy enough. So this is just the name of your Wi-Fi, and this is the password for your Wi-Fi so that when the Raspberry Pi boots up, it will automatically plug this into the network settings and you don't have to do anything. So I'm going to put that in and I'll be right back once that's done. Okay, so I have saved that document, and the next step here is to enable SSH, which is the secure shell, in order to remotely access the terminal of our Raspberry Pi. And if all of that went over your head, essentially what you're doing is using command prompt, but for Windows. So if you've never searched up command prompt on your Windows device or terminal on a Mac, then take a look, see what happens. And essentially that's what we're doing here. So I'm going to go into boot once more, and I'm going to make a new text document. There's supposed to be no extension, so I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work. There we go. So it's just a file with SSH, there's no extension, and that should activate SSH, and we should be good to go. So what you're going to do after this is take your SD card out of your computer, plug it into your Raspberry Pi, plug your Raspberry Pi into a power source, and then wait for it to launch and access it using the secure shell. Next step in the process is to take the freshly formatted SD card, plug it into the Raspberry Pi, then take your power source, plug it in, and you should see blinking green lights when the Pi boots up and a solid green light, meaning that it is ready to go. Great, so now that we've got our Raspberry Pi booted and running, the SSH access should be enabled and we should be able to secure shell into it. And I'm going to be following this document partially. So in order to find the IP address of Raspberry Pi, what I did at least was I just went to my router and I can find the IP address of my Raspberry Pi. So here you can see 192.196.0.130. So I just need to copy this IP address into my terminal and I will be able to secure shell into my Raspberry Pi. So let's just type in the command. So I'm going to hit yes. I do want to continue connecting. Password. Okay, found it. Default password here is Raspberry, so please type in Raspberry. And there you go. You can see that it's a Linux distribution, and we are essentially accessing the Raspberry Pi now from our Windows desktop. And next up, I'm going to install this virtual network viewer. It essentially allows us to view Raspberry Pi as a desktop instead of through the terminal, which is very nice and much preferred. So let's just make sure we got all our updates. I'm essentially just going to follow this document step by step. It's pretty straightforward. I'll make sure to post all the links in the description. So next, I'm just going to check and see if RealVNC server is actually installed. So it should already be installed, but just in case, you're going to install it. And there you go, it's already installed. So we're installing VNC Viewer at the moment. All right, so once that's all installed, we're now going to enable the VNC server. Sudo raspi config. And we should be able to do whatever it is we want to do. VNC. And we do want to enable that. Great, VNC has been enabled. And I'm going to change the password while I'm at it. Great. All right, so we're done with that. And now we're going to go to, if you go to this VNC page, you click the compatible app link, it'll take you to this page and you can download VNC Viewer onto your current device. So then we're just going to run the install. Oh, 5 kilobytes, that's going to hurt. And we're done. Now, all you have to do, go to your search bar, type in VNC Viewer, open up your app. You get this thing. And don't feel like sending my data. Great. So now all you do in here is type in the IP address that we got earlier. VNC has no record of the server, so it can't identify. It cannot be checked. Sure. I mean, it's my own server. So that's cloud connections. Yeah, so we should just be able to put in the username and password here. The password is the one I just did. And as you can see here, we are in the Raspberry Pi. Hooray! The aspect ratio is a little broken right now, but you can always fix that with a little bit of a reboot. Raspberry Pi is frozen a little bit. So this is all really basic, straightforward stuff, so I'll just get back to you guys once my Pi has finished its formatting. Alright, so now that we got everything done on the Raspberry Pi here, you can see that all is well. And essentially what I'm going to be doing in the next video is using this desktop and my files. I will be creating a website, which I have already done. I will upload it, initialize a Git repository, upload it to GitHub, and then I will pull from GitHub onto this desktop here so that it can run on the Apache server, which I will be installing next episode. And yeah, then we'll be able to access the Apache server through the command line because I'm on the same local network. And to get it into the global network, we're going to have to call my internet service provider and get a static IP address from them, which might take some time. But yeah, for now, this is where we're at. You can mess around on your Raspberry Pi. You can play Minecraft. You can do a whole bunch of cool stuff here. You can program some Python and run some Python codes. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's basically like a little free desktop. You can look at the media player, go to the internet. It's a good time. You don't really need anything else to run a computer. Thank you for stopping by to watch this video. If you liked, leave a like, subscribe for more, and I will see you next time.